Thank you for joining with us here at Voice from the Real World. I'm Rich.
I'm Larry.
And what we've been doing is looking at the section in the preface, which is a wonderful synopsis of the course, which, if you recall the history of it, was asked for by a number of early students. So Helen went back and received this from Jesus, from the Voice, as a recap or synopsis of the entire course. And there are three sections to the preface. One is what it is, one is how it came, and then this is what it says. We got over to page Roman numeral 12, XII. We'll be beginning around the second paragraph, but we're going to back up. So we'll start at the top of the page. And it says, "Only minds can really join, and whom God has joined, no man can put asunder. It is, however, only at the level of the Christ mind that true union is possible and has, in fact, never been lost." Now, the Course tells us that heaven is union. So, the understanding of the mind which needs salvation is due to the idea of separation, which is the idea of fragmentation or unjoining, being disjointed. The Course always calls us back to this idea of oneness or union. And it's only in oneness or union, which is the heavenly thought, that you return to your true function, which is creation, which is nothing but expanding the oneness that is the everything that is.
Right. If you look closely the way this is worded, the Father joined minds. It says this idea of man, idea and mind are two different things here. The idea is the idea of man, or the idea of something else that could split what the Father joined. That's like the little wave on the ocean saying, "I'm the whole ocean," and it's like the little sunbeam that says, "Well, I'm the entire sun." It's not. It's an idea that had no cause, it had no effect. So really, you think of how foolish the idea is, that the idea of man, limitation, could separate the thought of the mind of the Father that joined minds in eternity, that goes back to the little thought creeping in where all is one. It never affected anything. So this is a reestablishing of the fact that what's one is one because the minds were joined. Cause and effect are one. You can't have effect without cause. You can't have cause without effect, and effect can't be different than cause because we're co-creators. Co-creators mean everything's created is created by Father and Son as one.
The Course tells us that he clarifies and he says, God, the Father, first cause, is not in you. You are in Him.
Right.
That's why the only true, real relationship is you and Him, because once you recognize your relationship in Him, that is where all minds are joined, because everything is within Him. You are in everything, therefore you have everything, and it brings us to our next sentence. The, quote, little I, unquote, seeks to enhance itself by external. What does external mean? Ex means out. Outside of itself, outside of its own perception or awareness, by external approval, external possessions, and external, quote, love. So let's go over those three things in more depth. Approval. Where would oneness go to find approval?
There is no need for approval because He said, "I didn't create you with, I created you as." So we are everything. I don't need anything when I recognize that I am everything.
My esteem, if I needed such a thing, is found in the wholeness, in the oneness of the heavenly thought, of the thought of God. So I need no external approval to give me, am I okay? It's kind of like some of the old teachings, am I okay? I'm okay, you're okay. Well, no, there is no I'm in you, because we're all in Him, and if we're in Him, we're just fine, because we are everything. External possessions. If you have and are everything, why would you seek esteem in an external possession? That's insanity.
How can you own anything? All you're dealing with are symbols, and symbols are the reflection of an idea that has no cause and no effect. So the Course sums it up like this: nothing. You're pursuing nothing. And when it says nothing, it really means nothing. It don't mean something. It means nothing. So symbols are mere reflections of an idea. And the idea has long since been corrected and no longer is in the mind that thought it. So what you're dealing with is a thing we made up called memory. And this memory is an echo of that idea of specialness through difference that we call time.
And we're trying to establish that. And then it says external, quote, love, which means it's not love at all, because love would never look outside itself, because love is forever extending and including back into itself, which is creation. So to look outside for individual, special, quote, love is actually looking for false love. It's looking for the imitation of love. It's actually fear.
We want feedback. Feedback makes us feel good about ourselves. Because, see, you take a person giving a speech, and they're always dealing with uncertainty about their ability in their writing skills or in their communication skills. And so they have certain ones in the audience that they can lock on to, that they know that love them. What do you mean love? It means they're going to feed them positives instead of feeding them negatives. Because you got to have something to counterbalance the negative with the positive. But see, that's not love at all. That's using the symbol to serve the thought of yourself, independent, your little kingdom, and make you feel good about yourself. But you can't be secure in that because there's no place of security in this thought.
It reminds me, as speakers, we've been there, so we know the insecurities that you ultimately lay down as you allow the Holy Spirit to be the voice that He is. But it may not necessarily be that a speaker has people in the audience they even know or have planted to give them the feedback. What they'll do, if you'll ever watch a politician, when they walk out on stage, they will suddenly, right in the first 5 seconds on stage, they will look to an area and they will act as if they recognize someone, and they will smile and wave to them. Now, they're trained to do this. So most of the time, they don't even know anybody. But they have associated themselves and locked into that area as special. So now the people in the audience say, hey, was she looking at me? Or did he just smile at me? Did he point to me? And everybody in that section is feeling special.
And they'll reflect that.
Of course. Now they're in. They bought in. So now they will give feedback, but it will be positive feedback. Yeah. It's an old-time trick. All right, so external love. The true self, capital S, that God created, needs nothing. It is forever complete, safe, loved, and loving. It seeks to share rather than to get. Now that's a no-brainer. When you understand you are everything, what would you get? In the false world, giving is to get. I give, but only to get. In the real world, or in heavenly thought, giving is to extend and increase. There's no need to get because I am everything. What I'm increasing is what everything is, an idea of everything that is all inclusive.
See, going back to what you said earlier about the Son in the Father, I am the Father's thought. I never leave my source. To say that I am lacking is to say there's not enough in the source. And I've had to go outside of the source and round up, scrape up, dig up something to try to survive. And you said something else that's really good. I love this. I'm latching on to this. You says it's an old-time trick. Well, time is an old-time trick of the mind.
Sleight of hand.
And we keep using the old-time trick, trying to make it work, and it won't work.
Time is the condition of the mind that locks us into this false perception. So he says it seeks to share rather than to get, to extend rather than project. It has no needs and wants to join with others out of their mutual awareness of abundance. And that mutual awareness of abundance is found in the one thought, the thought of the Father, which is abundance. All right, so now we pick up where we would left off. The special relationships of the world are destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric. What is a special relationship? A special relationship says, I'm going to bring my thinking, my mind, out of oneness and allness, and all are the same, sameness, without change, without any time to change, an eternal idea. And I'm going to give up the communion and communication that is consistent in that thought. And I'm going to block all of that and only focus and communicate and commune with those that I evaluate and determine to be special. We're born into special relationships as children, parents, brothers and sisters, cousins, etc., 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 teachers. And then we get into the romantic idea. And now we're looking, again, out of this emptiness of this thought, we're continuing to look for specialness. The special relationships are destructive, selfish, and childishly egocentric.
Let me give you a baseball analogy since the Cubs won.
Yeah.
I've been listening to the sports radio. The biggest thing that they've been harping on is all of these instant Cub fans that come out of the woodwork that were never Cubs fans, that had no thought of the Cubs until the Cubs had a shot at the World Series. Now that they're the World Series, everybody's a Cubs fan. And how the old timers who had to suffer through 70 years,
108 years.
108 years of no championship, how it's not fair to them. You know what that is? That's a perfect picture of, hey, to be a Cubs fan is to be a part of a special group. Mm-hmm. Very special, because they've suffered a long, long time. And I can identify and retroactively become a part of all of that suffering by being a Cubs fan and get in on the good part, because it's special. See, this specialness thing is the biggie. And you got to be different to be special. So all of your support system around you can't be like you. It must be different from you, because your specialness is in the fact that you're different from it.
This is about association. And we have all kinds of, Jesus called it strange associations that are trying to hold this thing up. But that's a great analogy. Think of how powerful and strong. In fact, the Course says you cannot receive salvation without releasing this idea of sacrifice. It is so key to this false thought system and the ego thought system that is built upon it, sacrifice. So here's a picture of people that want to associate with the alleviation from sacrifice by pretending to having sacrificed, to having been in pain. And we know that the special relationships is the ego's chief weapon, the Course says, in keeping you from the heavenly thought, from heaven. And the promise is that every special relationship now is a means that the Holy Spirit can use to bring you to a holy relationship and bring you the awareness of truth. So it says, yet if given to the Holy Spirit, these relationships can become the holiest things on earth, earth meaning this place of perception, the miracles that point the way to the return to heaven. The world uses its special relationships as a final weapon of exclusion and a demonstration of separateness. So again, we're talking about differences, exclusion. I'm actually from Cleveland, so I should have been an Indians fan, but I was a neutral fan enjoying what was happening. So I don't associate with that. But in this world of associations, like you said, it's based on specialness, it's based on differences, and then exclusion. So if I'm wearing a Cubs jersey, then I can easily associate with everyone wearing a Cubs jersey until there's a thought in my mind, which the domino of exclusion and specialness has been knocked over. So now I don't really care for the black people that are wearing a Cubs fan. So now, even within that association,
right,
man, I don't want to associate with that. Keeps going on because specialness is the thought. We ask to be special in the heavenly thought, in the Father's view. He could not give that to us. And that's why we did what we did, or think we did what we did, in this tiny mad idea.
And see, that's another reason cause and effect. It does not exist in the dream. It says you did not bring love into the dream. Cause and effect are identical. Father and son are the same. You've seen the Son, you've seen the Father. Well, if you've seen the Father, you've seen the Son. So cause and effect are always the same, never different. But in this idea of specialness through difference, you can't maintain specialness without your effects being different from the cause. So you get a cold. Let's just use this. You get a bad cold. You're coughing and you're sneezing and you're grunting and you're groaning and you're trying to figure, how did I get this? Who did I get this from? And if you search it out and you pin it on somebody, they didn't have those symptoms. Well, the cause and effect don't look the same. or it was caused from something that you never would have associated. Legionnaire's disease came from air handlers that were not properly maintained. Well, you can't look at the air handlers and say, oh, that looks just like Legionnaire's disease, because cause and effect are different. That's why there is no cause and effect, because true cause and effect is Father and Son.
Right. If you've seen the Son, you've seen the Father. The Holy Spirit transforms them into perfect lessons in forgiveness and in awakening from the dream. Each one is an opportunity to let perceptions be healed and errors corrected. Each one is another chance to forgive oneself by forgiving the other, and each one becomes still another invitation to the Holy Spirit and to the remembrance of God. So again, the Holy Spirit changes the goal of the relationship, and therefore the means is automatically changed. It's heading in a different direction. It has a different purpose. It's no longer to teach us the mind dark lessons, but to teach the bright lessons of love and truth. And this is why this is a Course in Miracles. It takes two, because we made two. So we look at our special relationships and we allow the Holy Spirit to bring holiness to them, and they become the lesson that leads us to truth.
Well, if the heart of specialness is difference, when I see my brother and I look beyond the symbol, the form, the body, and I see the reality of the thought of God, not an idea of time, but I see the reality of the thought of God, which is myself, I see sameness. So the idea of specialness disappears into the reality of being one with the Father as the Son. And so that becomes a holy relationship, to where that sight of my brother properly becomes my own salvation.
That is the miracle ministry. Perception is a function of the body and therefore represents a limit on awareness. Let's talk about the body. The body was made to reinforce in our thinking, in our perception, the idea of individuality, specialness, breaking communication. I'll choose who I talk to, who I don't talk to, who I look at, who I don't look at, and I can make special. I can be male or female or some other sexuality. I can be attractive or ugly and gain specialness through that in one's eyes. I can dress up or make up, or I can tattoo my way to specialness to say, I am not the same as you. We are not the brothers of the same Father who have everything and are the same. I am special.
And we know that perception is the results of projection. So there is a pro factor involved. So let's look at this. Let's break the word up a little bit, play with the word a little bit. If I have a pro part, which means I initiated the idea, and I have perception or a pre-concept already established. Pre means before. I've already established the conception of this thing. So now all I got to do is see it reflected back to me, and there it is. It's born right there.
There's the proof. Right?
I conceived it with that. So pro, pre, concept, symbols to reflect, and you got a world of time, space, difference and specialness and war and fear and judgment and guilt and sin.
And bodies.
And bodies.
Perception sees through the body's eyes and hears through the body's ears. Now, the Course teaches us that the body doesn't see anything. It doesn't hear anything. Ears don't hear. That's why even in the Bible, Jesus said, he that hath ears to hear, let him hear. He that has eyes to see, let him see. Because you can't see with these natural eyes. What you're going to see with your body is a world of bodies, a world of illusion that is sending back to you the messages that you projected onto it, which is how perception works. And that constant learning of the use of the body, that's why he says perception is a function of the body, to use perception in such a manner through faith, belief, and seeing that it get locked into this thing, we make it so real that you can't convince me that it's not real. And the Holy Spirit's saying, okay, let's change the goal, let's change the means, let's use your faith, let's use your belief, but let's drop this projection, let's drop this body thing, and let me start to show you something else and an ability to see through vision. And so now we have faith, belief, and vision that lead us to the real world, which is now a totally different world that is given, that is not conceived in our own mind, but is given by the Holy Spirit, and we are able to see the real world. It evokes, again, the body, the limited responses which the body makes. The body appears to be largely self-motivated and independent, yet it actually responds only to the intentions of the mind. If the mind wants to use it for attack in any form, it becomes prey to sickness, age, and decay.
Now, the reason for that is that the body is a reflector of the thought system. So if it's a thought system of decay and attack and death, the body can do nothing but reflect it because it don't have a mind of its own.
It's neutral. It's
neutral. It's a reflector. You remember seeing these little white reflectors on a bicycle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can shine a red light on that white reflector. You know what it'll reflect? Red. I can shine a blue light or a green light, and it's going to reflect whatever I'm projecting onto that reflector. There's your body right there. We made the body to reflect our thought system and keep us locked in and keep us special and different.
And now the way Jesus is presenting this is, here's your idea, here's the ego thought and the utilization for this. So let me give you mine or the Holy Spirit's version. And he says, if the mind accepts the Holy Spirit's purpose for it being the body instead, it becomes a useful way of communicating with others, invulnerable, as long as it is needed, and to be gently laid by when its use is over. Okay, so what he said, if your mind wants to use a body for attack, it becomes prey to sickness, age, and decay. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. So if I can actually come to a place with the Holy Spirit's guidance where I am not utilizing the body for attack, then it is not prey to sickness, it is not prey to age nor decay.
Right.
And it is going to be there for communicating with others, communicating what? Truth. To be a reflector of truth, and it's invulnerable as long as it is needed. Okay, who determines how long it's needed? The plan of salvation, the plan of atonement, which Jesus is the head of. He said, I fulfilled my role perfectly. You need to as well.
Right.
And we can do that. But the purpose is not to glorify the body. The body's already a hero of the fall stream. So this is not about trying to live to be 200 or 300 or prove how I'm not aging or anything like that, because all that's going to do is induce fear and false salvation.
Right. See, it says in another place, there are means and ends. And what you've done is you've taken the body and made it a means. All it is a reflector. That's the end of the story right there. It's a symbol of the thought. But you've given it the power of means to accomplish something else. Well, what is that something else that you're trying to accomplish? You've given it cause and effect. You've given it the ability to be sinful, to be sick, to be born, to die, to testify to your thought system, which is an insane thought system.
So in the ego thought system, we looked at the body to tell us how we're doing today. How you doing?
How you feel today, buddy?
Shoulder hurts, sniffling, tired, watched the World Series too late, hate this job, all that stuff.
But now today, most are feeling better because it's Thursday. And that means tomorrow's Friday, which means Saturday and Sunday's coming up.
Right.
So see, it's all determined by something outside that is related to the body.
Something not now. One of my old-time friends from the military posts a lot on Facebook, and it was funny because he said, I've been working nonstop for so many days, and I got the weekend, and I can't wait. And he posts that. It's Friday, all excited. And then on Sunday at night, he posts, he goes, man, I can't believe it. I just slept through the whole thing.
Yeah, you did. You slept
and that's,
through the whole
that's
thing.
the perfect picture of seek and do not find.
Right.
Always looking for something in time, never in the instant, but somewhere else. And we know that in the holy instant, the body does not exist. It disappears because it can only be anticipated, or it can be remembered or anticipated.
The beautiful thing, too, is when the mind returns to knowledge, it don't remember what didn't happen. So there's no regret. In other words, he regretted he slept through the weekend. We won't look back and say, oh my God, I slept for 50,000 years. No, we didn't lose anything. My true self never missed a note in heaven.
In heaven's song, absolutely. Of itself, again speaking of the body, it is neutral, as is everything in the world of perception. Everything, including the body, in the entire world and that includes all the universes you can think of, is nothing. It is neutral. It is what you give it. He says the world is what you give it.
It has the capacity to reflect your thought and whatever you assign to it as meaning.
And so once you select, you choose to see another world, and a world that is given rather than the one you made, then you will see, because you have chosen to see nothing but loveliness, joyfulness, the wonders of the real world mentality.
Well, the basic desire of the Father is that the Son be happy. So the Father who created the Son knows how to make the Son happy. So the real world is your introduction back into the Father's will, which is happiness.
Whether it is used for the goals of the ego or the Holy Spirit depends entirely on what the mind wants, not the body. The body is neutral. The body is nothing. The opposite of seeing through the body's eyes is the vision of Christ, which reflects strength rather than weakness, unity rather than separation, and love rather than fear. If you're listening to us right now, you have a choice today. For this moment, for the next hour, for the rest of this day, for the rest of this week, and for the rest of your so-called life, to choose. You can have strength or weakness. You can have unity or separation, or you can have love or fear. What's the difference? What are you looking with? If you're looking with eyes, the body's eyes, you cannot find strength, unity, and love. It will fail you, because no matter how you have tried to deceive your own mind into thinking that what you're seeing is these things, they are not. You are deceiving yourself. And ultimately, all those goals, false love, false idols will fall, and they will not be what you thought they were. The opposite of hearing through the body's ears is communication through the voice for God, the Holy Spirit, which abides in each of us. His voice seems distant and difficult to hear because the ego, which speaks for the little separated self, seems to be much louder. I remember years ago, you may have been there, we were in a church together many, many years ago. And someone did a demonstration, and they said, you want to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit? It's a still, small, still, quiet voice. Okay, are you ready? Okay, everybody get real quiet. But unbeknownst to everybody that was watching this, the speaker had a crew of about 5 or 6 young people from college. And he says, I'm going to be that still, small voice, and I'm going to speak to you, and I want you to tell everybody what I say. You ready? And everybody get real still. And just about when he was ready to start, these 5 kids jumped up out of their seats and started screaming and got right around this guy, the kid. He started yelling at him and screaming and distracting him and everything. And the guy whispered in a small, still voice, and he said, hey, you got any idea what I said? He goes, I don't have a clue what you said. Right, because you have allowed this other voice, the ego voice, that speaks much louder. It speaks first, and it speaks loud.
And we gave that voice its voice. See, it's not something. It's not something that is invading us.
Right.
It's our defense against the truth. The voice for the Father, the Holy Spirit, is the truth. So we set up a defense. We made another voice. We made a voice that would scream time and space and difference and specialness and hate and judgment. And I'm going to drop a little something here. If you think after next Tuesday that all of the strife and all of the attack and all the shenanigans are going to disappear after you make that vote, I'm sorry to tell you it's not going to be that way, because this is a thought system. Last week we used the analogy of the theater being the big building that holds all of the cinemas in it. You got to get out of the theater, outside where there's peace, or to return to yourself where there's peace, and that's what the real world is about. And that's really all we're talking about. We're calling, come join us in this arena of peace. Don't look in the cinema. Don't look in the theater to find this, because next Tuesday, when all the voting's done, Wednesday's going to be next page, next chapter of the same old story.
So we know that in the heavenly thought, as we began this teaching today, it is union, it is true communication with all, true communion with all that is created, because it is the Father's mind. It is the one-mindedness of reality. Now, once we tried to block awareness of that, so we had to throw away knowledge, and in throwing away knowledge, we had to throw away the communion and communication. Now, thankfully, the Father gave us a guide, a voice. Okay, we made a voice, He made a voice. This voice of peace and sanity came into the illusion with us, into the separation with us. And He's trying to give us now in this recap how the voice for God works. His voice seems distant and difficult to hear because the ego, which speaks for the little separated self, seems to be much louder. This is actually reversed. The Holy Spirit speaks with unmistakable clarity and overwhelming appeal. No one who does not choose to identify with the body could possibly be deaf to His messages of release and hope, nor could he fail to accept joyously the vision of Christ in glad exchange for his miserable picture of himself. This is why the body is the hero of the dream. Because without the body and the world of bodies that the body sees, all you would hear was this unmistakable, overwhelmingly appealing voice of the Spirit. And as we speak, we call ourselves Voice from the Real World Ministries. We recognize that only that voice is saving you. It's not my voice, it's not Larry's voice. No. It's the voice that is within you that came into this illusion, came into this tiny mad idea with you, that will speak to you. All we have to do is help you to identify what the ego thought system is and this idea of a body, and to release it. And as soon as you release it, you will hear the clarity. How long will that take? An instant. If it's not taking an instant, it's because you're choosing not to let it take an instant. That's all it is. Right. That is your choice. You can blame it on poor teachers or that Rich stumbles or stutters or whatever, but it's not. It's your choice. Right. Christ's vision is the Holy Spirit's gift, God's alternative to the illusion of separation and to the belief in the reality of sin, guilt, and death. So the question that we're calling you to, the decision that we're calling you to, or the answer that we're calling you to is, what do you want to be real? Do you want sin, guilt, and death to be real? Or do you want love, joy, oneness, and innocence to be real? That's your choice. If you choose sin, guilt, and death, then you have chosen the body and everything the body sees. If you've chosen the other, the Holy Spirit's alternative, then you will see a real world that reflects nothing but love, joy, and peace. It is the one correction for all errors of perception, the reconciliation of the seeming opposites on which this world is based. Its kindly light shows all things from another point of view, reflecting the thought system that arises from knowledge and making return to God not only possible, but inevitable. So there are two thought systems, and there are two voices, and there are two teachers of those thought systems. All this is about, this whole book, this whole course is about helping you make a choice. Which one are you going to choose?
Well, and the thing about it, if we go back and look at what has already happened, we've already chosen. But what we chose to do is to rehearse that echo of time and postpone the acceptance of what we already know. Because it says once you accept it, you recognize that you already know. See, I already know. I am knowledge. How could I not know? I would have to put up a block to the knowledge that I am knowledge and substitute it with an idea of something else and hold on to that desperately. But there's your favorite word, inevitable. It's inevitable that we let this go. The course was given to us to say, how long do you want to hold on to the bar? Your knuckles are white, all the blood's drained out of your hands, they're getting numb. How long do you want to hold on to the bar? I give you a course to where you can release yourself into your reality as quickly as you desire. You can get it whenever you're ready to accept that you already know, that you already are. And that's what this is. This is holding on to the game of time and playing the little game. When you hear Dad's voice calling you, saying, son, it's time to come home.
So stop playing games. We can play a game the Holy Spirit has, and it's called the real world. It's still an illusion. But how do we do that? All right, so he's going to tell us here. So this is not walking around pretending nothing's going on. Oh, I don't see that terrorist. I got my fingers in my ears hoping the bomb don't go off like in the cartoons. This is not about denial. We're denying the denial. The denial is the block that we are knowledge, that we are everything.
Right.
So we have denied that. Okay, so we made an ability called denial. Great. Well, guess what I'm going to deny? I'm going to deny the whole idea of denial.
Right.
And he tells you how to do that right here. What was regarded as injustice is done to one by someone else now becomes a call for help and for a union. Okay, so you're telling me, Mr. Rich and Mr. Larry, that you guys see this murderer on TV who just hacked up somebody, or the ISIS guy that's just hacked somebody's head off, as a call for help and for union?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
the only thing I see.
That's all it can be.
I no longer see an injustice done to one by someone else, because it's a dream and it's a nightmare being dreamed by people that want to dream. The victim of the ISIS guy is dreaming. He's a victim of the ISIS guy. That's his dream.
That's his dream.
He's chosen that.
That's specialist.
That is special. Maybe they'll put up a plaque for me with my name on it.
Specialness is not concerned with suffering, because suffering is a form of specialness. Go back to the Cubs. I can suffer for 108 years. If I can maintain my specialness, then that's suffering. So it's not about not suffering. It's about maintaining specialness or difference. That's what this whole thing's about. So the victim and the victimizer are both special in the role they play in the dream of difference.
And they are seen as different. Obviously, that's the maximum difference there could possibly be, is a murderer and the victim.
Right.
But that's what we're looking for, is difference, so that we can stay apart and block our awareness of union, because heaven is union. Sin, sickness, and attack are seen as misperceptions calling for remedy through gentleness and love. You do not counter attack with attack.
You made it real.
He calls us to live above the battleground and deal with this through gentleness and love. That's why this character in the dream called Jesus, that's why he was seen. You talk about a messed up culture that he was in. It was like the perfect environment to show all of these lessons. And right in the middle of it is perfect gentleness and love. Defenses are laid down because where there is no attack, there is no need for them. Our brothers' needs become our own because they are taking the journey with us as we go to God. Without us, they would lose their way. Without them, we could never find our own. And again, it goes to taking two. To have a miracle worker, a lot of people say, oh, no, this is a self-study course. I just have to receive the atonement for myself. It doesn't say that. What it says is the miracle worker must receive the atonement for himself. Inherent in the idea of miracle worker is a me and a you.
Right.
A miracle giver and a miracle receiver.
See, if we made ourselves different, special through difference, we heal ourselves through seeing the sameness as the thought of God or the Son of God.
A miracle makes the same, makes all be seen as the same. Forgiveness is unknown in heaven, where the need for it would be inconceivable. Well, that's common sense, whatever our thought of heaven is. However, in this world, forgiveness is a necessary correction for all the mistakes that we have made. Not sins, not sin, but simply an error of mind, an error in our thinking that we have made. To offer forgiveness is the only way for us to have it, for it reflects the law of heaven that giving and receiving are the same. So let's talk about this law of heaven called giving and receiving.
And the same. The word same here is important.
Right. Giving and receiving are the same in the heavenly thought is because there is no gap of time to separate anything.
And there's no difference.
So all that is given, the Course says to have, give all to all, because that's the only thing cause can give. If cause is love, then love must share, must give all. It cannot withhold anything.
Right.
So it gives all that it is. So the Father gives the Son all that it is, and in giving it, if He's a Father, then He must have given Him fatherhood. Then the Son becomes a Father who gives, and creation continues. And it's only in that thought of giving and receiving. Now, it's not giving to receive, but it's like what we always talk about. We are unifying by increasing. Giving increases the thought, the idea, which is limitless, And it brings it back into the oneness that thought has always been, called the Father, who is the thought, the cause for all things. So all we could do is distort this law of heaven of giving and receiving. So we have to put a gap in our thinking and then in our expression or in our reflection, saying, well, no, don't think that if you give $100, you'll get $100. And, well, if you did, it would be down the line somewhere. All this craziness that has nothing to do with the thought of creation or the law of creation, which is true giving and receiving.
If you always remember this, in this ego-conscious idea, nothing is the same because this was based on difference. So in heaven, all is the same. Giving, receiving, cause and effect. It's all one. It's all the same. It's not different. There's no difference. But when we entered into this concept that we made of time and difference and separation and specialness, we could not bring sameness into it. So therefore, if I give, I've got a motive behind that giving, and I'm not really giving. You can't give, you can only invest. And you're making a decision to invest in something that will pay you more. You're looking not to lose. So there's the concepts of gain and loss that enters into this concept of giving and receiving in this illusion of difference.
The other thing the Course tells us is that the Holy Spirit is introducing to your mind the idea of giving a miracle. But you have split giving and receiving. So you need to receive the miracle. What we just read was give forgiveness so that you can receive forgiveness. Give a miracle so that you can receive a miracle. Give sonship and innocence to someone across the table so that you can receive innocence and sonship.
Right.
That's giving and receiving. That's why it can be done in an instant. But what Jesus says is what you have failed to do, you have come a long way, he said, but what you have failed to do is recognize that there can be no distance, no time. So you think it's off in the distance. If I read the rest of these 1,200 pages, maybe I'll get it one day. No. Giving and receiving are the same, and they are instantaneous.
Right.
That's why you can be saved in an instant. What do I want? Well, whatever you want, give it. Because I got news for you. Whatever you're giving, you are getting instantaneously. If you're giving hate, you're getting hate right away. You may not recognize it in the form because the ego thought has camouflaged this. If every time you said, I don't like you, and you punched yourself in the head immediately, you'd soon figure out, hey, it's kind of like the old joke that the old timers used to say is, hey, I went to the doctor and I said, hey, when I do this, it hurts. He said, well, stop doing that.
Right.
So you would recognize it, but we don't recognize it. Why don't we recognize it? Because we don't want to recognize it. We want to distort the law of God of giving and receiving, and we want to put this gap in there and camouflage that we can give attack and not be attacked. And you gave a perfect example of a family member who got upset at one point, and then tell that story.
Well, instantly, my sweet little wife, she's no longer with me. And she never, ever really got angry. But something happened, and I seemed to make her extremely angry. And within 10 minutes, she was deathly sick. And she immediately associated her vicious anger over nothing with this terrible sickness that hit her all of a sudden. And she recognized that. And she learned a lesson.
Because she wanted to.
She wanted to learn, because that wasn't something she would normally do. But we both learned a lesson. And see, the reason we see forgiveness of the brother, and you see yourself in that forgiveness. We drop back over here where it talked about the call for love. Where we used to see them as hateful and attacking us, now we recognize this is my brother. This is not an enemy. The only way I can have an enemy is to be an enemy to an enemy. Or make myself an enemy and then project that thought and then let it reflect back to me an enemy. That's the only way you have them. But forgiveness says, hey, I'm a healer. I'm the miracle. So what do I see? I see miracles. That's all I see. I see love calling to me, and I get to answer the call.
Heaven is the natural state of all the sons of God as He created them. Such is their reality forever. It has not changed because it has been forgotten. Just because you chose to make memory, which when we made memory, we made the ability to forget. Just because you forgot it doesn't change its reality at all. Forgiveness is the means by which we will remember. Remember what? Our reality. Remember the heavenly state. Remember giving and receiving are the same. Through forgiveness, the thinking of the world is reversed. The forgiven world becomes the gate of heaven. That forgiven world is what the Course calls the real world. It is forgiven. It is an innocent world. It has never done anything to cause its innocence to be impacted. Because by its mercy, we can at last forgive ourselves. That sounds weird. The world is merciful? Well, which world are you looking at? If you're looking at the natural, false world you made, it is not merciful. It is vicious. We know that the ego thought system, the ego's thought runs from suspicion, the old Elvis. We can't go on together with suspicious minds, all the way to viciousness. And what is wonderful about what this election season and its strife and craziness and insanity, even the world is saying that this is insane. It's taking the camouflage and the hiddenness off of all of this craziness to show how crazy it is. That's great. But we're not looking to the craziness to remind us that we're in an insane asylum. We look to the innocence of the real world, which becomes a merciful place, and the real world is speaking the answer we looked for. How can this world be speaking the answer we looked for? Because we gave it that. We gave it love. We gave it forgiveness. We gave it its innocence, and it is shining back to us.
As long as we need reflectors, we'll have reflectors, and therefore we'll have perception. Or we'll believe that we are perceivers rather than knowers. But there comes a point in the real world where you recognize the body, I don't need this.
I don't need perception.
I don't need reflectors. So therefore, I don't need perception. And therefore, this conscious idea never existed. I don't need the theater anymore. I'm through with the movies, so what I want a theater for? I don't need a dream.
We use miracles until we recognize we are the miracle that we've always been, which the miracle is the Son of God in His creation as the extension of the Father. You cannot do miracles when you recognize all are the miracle. And now you're there. So now you're in corrected perception. Now you're at the gate of heaven. It's easily translated. It says perception just flows over into knowledge because there's no more need for perception. I have utilized the Holy Spirit's correction of perception to leave perception behind. I have gone beyond all symbols to leave all symbols behind. I don't need symbols when you have the reality.
I've been saying this for a long time. We perceived our way into this illusion. The Holy Spirit says, okay, I can take you and we'll perceive our way out until you actually perceive, through corrected perception, you perceive your way out of it.
Holding no one prisoner to guilt, we become free. Acknowledging Christ in all our brothers, we recognize His presence in ourselves. What does the Course say? I saw the face of Christ in all my brothers.
Recognize Spirit in Spirit's knowledge.
That's the end of the line when you get there. That's all He did. That's all you need to do. And actually you already have, because He could not have done that without... He gave Christ, the face of Christ, to you because He saw it in all His brothers. Not the people that were hanging around in 2,000 years ago. To all His brothers.
The mind was there.
And what did He receive? He received what He saw, what He gave. We recognize His presence in ourselves, forgetting all our misperceptions, and with nothing from the past to hold us back, we can remember God. So we made up memory. So now He's saying, just like we talked about denying to denial, let's forget the past. You interjected the past, this idea of time, to block your remembrance of reality of Father of Heaven. Let's forget what you threw in there, which was forgetting. So let's forget forgetting so that we can remember. Because as soon as you let go of memory, which is the reason we have to let go of the past, reality is there. It's always been there. Beyond this, learning cannot go. When we are ready, God Himself will take the final step in our return to Him. Now, that final step, we've talked about this many times. The final step is the only step God has ever taken, and that is when He created you. What you're going to remember is His step. You're putting that off by blaming it on Him that He's got to do something. He can't do anything. All He's ever done is created you. So that's why whenever it's talking about returning to knowledge in this course or turning to heaven, it's always a term that is not of your doing, because your creation was not of your doing. Thinking that your creation was of your doing, whether it was anonymous or you recognize you made yourself, that was a step that was not the Father's step. So let go of your steps, and you will return to the final step, which was the first step and the only step that Father ever took, which was creating you to be exactly as He is, a creator, a Father, full of love, only love. That's all you are, that's all you ever have been.
The guiltless Son of God.
So, with that, we want to thank all of you for joining with us. We recognize the face of Christ in all of you. And our motto here is that we always unify by increasing, and we integrate by extending. That is the law of creation. That is the law of giving and receiving. Always remember the sum of this curriculum is you are innocent. You are the Holy Son of God. The Son of God is innocent. You always have been, and you always will be